What is up, guys? It is Chick from QuadHunting, and today we're going to go through all of the Lions' moves that they made during the first wave of free agency. Welcome to Detroit! We're going to start off on offense because I feel like more of the impactful signings were made on offense, and then we'll move to defense where the signings weren't as impactful. Mostly it was just depth guys, but there were a couple moves that the Lions made on defense that are worth talking about, so we'll talk about them as well. Starting off on offense, though, my favorite signing of the whole free agency was signing right tackle Ricky Wagner from the Baltimore Ravens. If you watched my right tackle's needs video, I wish I would have made more of those videos, but free agency kind of kicked off. I will do some of those for the draft, though. If you watched that video, I had Wagner listed on there, but I had said I think it's stupid if Baltimore lets him get away. Plus, I think he's going to be way out of the Lions' price range. Turns out he was neither. The Ravens did let him test free agency, and the Lions signed him to the biggest deal for a right tackle right now. Lane Johnson still gets paid a little more, but he is viewed as a guy who's going to move to the left side. He's getting paid, I think, about $11 million a year, where Wagner's getting paid $9 million a year just to play right tackle. The impact of this move is good. A lot of people right off the bat were, why are we paying a guy to play right tackle $9 million a year? That's just insane. But when you look at it, Riley Reif, the guy that Wagner's replacing, got signed to the Vikings for $10.5 million a year because he can play left tackle and right tackle. So if you think about it, the Lions would have had at least offer $10.5 million to get Reif to come back to play right tackle. They signed Wagner for $1.5 million cheaper a year to upgrade a position. He's better than Reif was at right tackle. So I consider them winners there. I give that move a solid A minus, mainly because they upgraded the position cheaper than what it would have cost them to maintain the status quo. So it's a great signing. I'm excited for that. My second favorite move on offense was signing TJ Lang from the Packers to play right guard for the Lions. Lang pretty quickly was connected to the Lions. Right off the bat, he had a meeting with the Lions. A lot of Lions fans started getting excited. He does come in with a hip worry. He injured his hip towards the end of the season, and then he's had just little injuries throughout pretty much his whole career. He was an All-Pro in 2016 and a Pro Bowler in 2016. So if he can stay healthy, he's one of the best guards that you can get. Now, the issue again here was price. We're paying, I think he's 29. He's 29, 30, or 31. I can't remember exactly. He's high 20s, low 30s. And he's had injury issues, and people are like, paying this guy $28.5 million over 3 years. It's actually more of a 2-year deal with an opt-out, which really wouldn't cost the Lions too much to cut him after 3 years if he's not living up to expectations. But I like this move. Pretty much the whole offensive line got upgraded by these two moves, Wagner and Lang. My best case scenario I thought coming into free agency was the Lions were going to re-sign Reif, let Warford walk, and then Laken Tomlinson was going to have to play right guard. But now you bring in TJ Lang and Wagner. You pretty much, that whole offensive line now is one of the best on paper. I mean, just probably below the Cowboys. And I know on paper is not the same as on the field. It takes time for an offensive line to gel. But I think you got Lang in there now. I mean, this offensive line was pretty young all the way through. Our oldest guy last year was Reif, and now our oldest guy this year is Lang, a guy who has playoff experience. And I believe was with the Packers when they won the Super Bowl. So that kind of experience is something you want. The Lions are grabbing players who have had success with Wagner and Lang. Both Wagner came from the Ravens. Was there when Jim Caldwell was the coach, said he likes Caldwell. You have Lang, who's been a fan of the Lions when he was a kid because he grew up in Michigan, says he wants to help this city win a championship. Those are all good things. I give the Lang signing a B+. Only reason I won't go higher is because I do think it was a lot. We had to compete with the Seahawks. He said he was 99% sure he was going to sign with the Seahawks. And then Detroit came back with a counteroffer right after that, after he had his meeting with the Seahawks. And he signed with Detroit. So we stole one from the Seahawks, and that's kind of cool. Hopefully, though, the money doesn't affect us too bad. These on-paper things with the Philadelphia Eagles in 2011 when Vince Young said, we have a dream team because they're huge free agency signings. Hopefully, it's not that case here. So hopefully Bob Quinn's made smart moves, which I'm believing in Bob Quinn after this offseason. I believed in him last offseason too, but this offseason is just further bankrolling trust in him. I love this signing also. I love that they signed tight end Darren Fells. I see a lot of people are like, well, why can't we just draft a guy who's going to be a tight end who can catch and block? Ebron's more of a receiver. He's a weak spot in the offense. Well, a lot of people are saying that because Ebron is not a complete tight end, why would you draft a guy like that? You don't draft number one, it was the old regime. They were trying to find weapons in that old regime, not so much guys who can play everything, versatility guys, but they were looking for weapons for Stafford because it was Calvin Johnson, and it was Calvin Johnson's time, and they were looking for guys to complement Calvin Johnson, and they thought Ebron could do that. I still think Ebron is a good tight end, is solid. He's not a complete all-around guy. He's not great at blocking, but as a receiver, I like the mismatches he creates. So when you have a guy like that, you need to sign a blocking tight end. Last year they were trying to get with Brandon Pettigrew, but Pettigrew never got healthy enough, and then when he was, they just cut him to get rid of the cap space. So then they had guys like Matthew Mulligan, Cole Wick, Kyrie Lee, I think it was, Clay Harbor. They were going through a bunch of different tight ends trying to find a good complement to Eric Ebron, and then when Ebron got hurt, they really were screwed with tight ends. So Darren Fells is a big guy. He's like 6'6", 6'7", 280. He's a big, massive guy who's going to mainly rely on the blocking. Maybe when he's in the end zone, he'll become a weapon, but he is mainly a blocking tight end, and that's what the Lions need. They got him cheap, so he'll be a great compliment to Eric Ebron. I give the signing a solid B-. Last signing on offense this is a guy to replace Andre Roberts, who was our punt and kick returner last year and our fourth wide receiver. They got the former Spartans wide receiver, Keyshawn Martin. I knew Keyshawn Martin, who was drafted by the Texans and then played a little bit for the Patriots. I think there was one more team between there, but the Patriots picked him up. He was mainly just a punt and kick returner. If you're relying on him to be like a number 2 receiver, I think you're going to be in a bad time. You're going to have a bad time. Cue South Park meme. But I think if you're just wanting him to be the fourth guy, a guy that can just step in for a couple plays, like Andre Roberts did last year and did a decent job at, he made some big catches. I think Keyshawn Martin can thrive in that role. It's another short-term deal with I think it's a 1-year deal with not a lot of money involved. So I'm pretty happy with that move. It's just a depth signing, and that's what you need in the NFL. You can't just sign star players to fill up the starters' roles, because if one of those star players goes down, you don't have money then to pay the bench guys who need to step up in that time and prove that they can play in the NFL. And a lot of times when you look at these like super teams that are built, someone gets hurt, they don't have the money to have a replacement. It's a undrafted free agent who can play in the NFL, but you don't want to rely on. So the Lions in this move is just, they're further along. They're just furthering their depth, their strength in their depth. And that's a great move for the Lions. But it's a guy who's going to play fourth receiver. Probably not going to get a lot of snaps as punt and kick returner. A C. I'll give the signing a C. I mean, it's just because, it's not going to be an impact thing. I mean, if he comes in and if he destroys offensive stuff, comes in, catches a lot of balls, catches a lot of touchdowns, yards, and that kind of stuff, and gets a lot of kick and punt and touchdowns, then I'm going to come back and say, wow, that was a great signing for what we got. That's an A+ signing. But right now, he's not expected to do much. I don't expect him to do much. I'm just going to give it a middle-of-the-road signing. This is one of those signings. It doesn't excite you. It just fills the depth. So, a C. Moving over to defense, where they pretty much just signed depth guys. There was really no starter that they signed here. It was depth and special teams guys. Maybe one guy could step up and be a starter. I'll get to him. He was the corner we signed. But if you start out in the defensive line, we signed defensive tackle Akeem Spence from, I believe he was Tampa Bay. Not 100% sure. But I like this move mainly because it's just a depth move. The only thing I really don't like is, I know that we needed to sign a D tackle. We needed to sign a D end. We did sign both. The D tackle, though, we signed a guy that we pretty much already had with Haloti Nagata and Ashawn Robinson. We pretty much signed that same player. He's a run stopper. He's never been a pass rushing guy. Now he says the Lions scheme fits him better as a D tackle that attacks. So maybe he can develop a pass rushing repertoire. Maybe he didn't have that when he was in Tampa Bay. They didn't want him to do that. But it's pretty much just signing a guy you already have. Now it's not bad if you're kicking the tires. It's not a huge deal. Bob Quinn has no problem, as we saw last year, signing guys to these contracts, and then once training camp comes, you're like, you know what, you lost a battle, you're not going to be, there you go, we're going to cut you. So he's not afraid to make those signings, which I kind of like. It's more of a Patriots thing. But you're just signing a guy who's pretty much redundant in your system already. It's just, if you take Ashawn out, like, hey, yeah, you can throw Spence in there and you're probably going to get the same kind of statistics. For depth, it's okay, but we need an impact starter at D tackle, and we didn't get that with him. So I'm going to give the move as another C. Depth guy is just, we did sign a D end, like I said. We signed Cornelius Washington. I keep wanting to call him Cornelius Lucas because we have Cornelius Lucas, and I don't know a lot of guys named Cornelius, but Cornelius Washington from the Bears. Willie Young actually was the one that saw him to coming to Detroit. Was in Detroit and then now plays for the Bears, and said, go to Detroit. Detroit's a cool place, apparently. Apparently, he said stuff to sell him on coming to Detroit. So we have a DN now. I think he's pretty much going to be a role guy. He's going to be a depth guy. If you're relying on him to start, I feel like you're probably going to get Devin Taylor type numbers. Disappointing if you have to rely on him for a long time. Could be good in flashes. So it's a depth move. It's what we needed. We were really weak at DN, but we still need that impact starter like we need at D tackle. Hopefully they can address those in the draft. I will talk about those more in the needs videos. But I'm going to give the move a solid B-. I mean, he fills a role. If you can have enough rotational guys, you can work out on a defensive line. He's got enough pass rushing ability and run stopping ability where he is probably already going to be a little higher than Kerry Hyder, where Hyder just comes in really on pass rushing downs. So, I like the move. It was all right. Moving on to linebacker, we got Paul Worlilow. I hope I'm pronouncing that. Worlilow. Okay, that guy. Played middle linebacker for the Falcons. Was a starter when he first got drafted. Was a decent one. And then every year he's kind of gone downhill. So, I don't really know what to expect with him. It sounds like we're just signing him to be more of a special teams player. I don't think he's going to be signed as I don't think he got signed to be a starter. Hopefully not. But this move kind of disappointed me because we heard news pretty shortly after his signing. Well, him and Wagner declared they were signed with the Lions during the time when free agency started, the little period, and then the time that teams were allowed to actually sign players to contracts. He signed with the Lions in that time period, verbal agreement pretty much, and it was shortly after that when the Lions cut DeAndre Levy. At first glance, I hated the move. I hated cutting Levy. I'll give the Worley low grading like a C again. I mean, he's just going to probably be there. The linebackers were weak last year. We just had a bunch of linebackers there who did not do much. I think that's where Paul Worley low is going to sit. Now, cutting Levy. I feel like a lot of fans forget what Levy was and just want to think about what he was the last 2 years, which was an injured guy who didn't play much after signing a big contract. When I mentioned it to some people that when they cut Levy, it was good riddance. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? This guy was one of the best defensive players to the Lions in a long time. If you look, when he got drafted in 2009, he came in as a backup. He was versatile enough to plug in at any of the linebacker positions when Ernie Sims, Larry Foote, or Julian Peterson went down. Yeah, remember those names? Separately, they sounded okay, but when you put them in a group, they were not good. So, I was pretty excited with Levy's career. I mean, he came in, had a little bit of injury issues, but then he was, quickly got in there. And then he had a 2-year stretch where I considered him one of the best linebackers in the league. We signed Tulloch and it allowed Levy to push outside the outside linebacker where he had been playing middle. Played outside linebacker. He had 1 year where he had a crap ton of interceptions. I can't remember what the exact number was. It was 5 or 6 interceptions. He was tied for second in the league at interceptions when he was beating out corners and safeties, which is insane. He was a sure tackler. I mean, he was just a guy who you knew was going to plug holes, intercept balls, play coverage great. And then he signed his big contract, which was deserved. And when you look at it, it really wasn't that big of a contract. It was very beneficial to the Lions. We cut him this year, and it was only $5.5 million we saved on the move. And you get a guy that's starting at $5.5 million and probably one of the best at his positions. That's a great deal. But he did have some injury issues. And I'm just hoping that Bob Quinn knew something we didn't. Maybe Levy got another issue, because this move was just questionable to me when it happened. I understand it though. You're paying a guy to play, not to be injured a lot, and it's all Levy has proven to be is kind of an injured guy. I'm waiting for him to sign that 1-year veteran minimum deal with the Patriots to blow it up and then get a big contract somewhere else again. I'm waiting for it. I feel like that'll happen sooner rather than later, unless like the Lions knew something that we don't, that he's just injured and damaged goods at this point. So I understand it. I get it. It's the cap space. We're not going to get it now. We're getting it after June 1st, so it'll be in that second wave of free agency. You know, like when we signed Anquan Boldin last year, who did announce he's coming back, but hasn't signed with the Lions yet. It sounds like he wants to sign closer to home, but he is got mutual. There is interest in him re-signing with the Lions. I mean, when you can be as successful as he was last year at his age, that's a good thing. Anyways, yeah, cutting Levy. I get the move. I don't like it 100%. I'm a fan. I'm not a front office guy. I'm a fan of these guys. Levy was one of the guys. I wanted to get his jersey, and I'm kind of glad I didn't, because I would have been stuck with Calvin Johnson and DeAndre Levy jersey. And yeah, both those guys don't play for the Lions anymore. Last signing the Lions, or not the last signing, but last signing on defense the Lions made was DJ Hayden, a former first-round cornerback picked by the Oakland Raiders. I think that was the same year Slay was drafted, or was the year after Slay was drafted? I think it was 13. No, Slay was drafted in 13. I think it was 14. I can't remember 100% when he was drafted. But bunch of injuries right off the bat. He had the great story coming up in the draft where he had almost died. He had a bunch of I can't remember if it was cancer. So he was almost died because of a disease. Then he was able to rebuild and become this first-round talent. Gets drafted and then just has more injury issues and played subpar when he played. The Lions signed pretty much a 1-year prove-it deal where if you prove that you can do this, I mean, you can restart your NFL career, kickstart it, make it better. Jumpstart is what word I was looking for. And you can become, hopefully, what I'm hoping is that he can prove it, because we need another corner to place opposite of Slay. We had Nevin Lawson last year, who wasn't terrible. And then in the nickel, we had Quandre Diggs. And then when he went down, he played okay, not great, not really, really terrible either. But when he went down, we replaced him with guys that played really, really terrible. So this is another depth signing. Hopefully he can fit somewhere in between, between Slay and just after Quandre Diggs, maybe. Maybe he plays the fourth guy that comes right off the bench when someone needs to take a breather. Hopefully that'll be his floor. And his ceiling would be a great number 2 to complement Darius Slay. He is a first-round talent. He can play. He's just got to figure it out. Is all I'm hoping, honestly. But that was the last signing. I'm going to give it just another C+. I mean, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, you're not on hook for a lot of money. It's one of those low-risk, high-reward things. So I'm going to change my grade to a B then. Like I said, low-risk, high-reward. That's kind of how a lot of the signings were. But yeah, still have needs all over the team. Free agency did help shore up the offense, though. And to help the Lions now focus more on defense in the draft, which is what free agency should do. You shouldn't just pick up players all over the place. You need to focus on really one area to improve during free agency, which will then take that area where we needed offensive linemen. Like everyone was projecting us to draft offensive linemen in the draft. Now you don't need to. You can still, maybe if you want to get depth guys, but now you can focus mainly on defensive line, linebackers, the defensive positions in the draft. And that's a good GM move that Bob Quinn made there. But anyways, if you like the video, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, leave comments. Who's still out there that you want the Lions to sign? Tell me in the comments below. And I will talk to you guys all hopefully soon for a defensive needs draft edition. So I will see you guys later.